It's time now for County-Wide, a presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. You'll hear about the interesting issues and happenings that affect all our lives. Here's today's County-Wide.
Well, once again, a good day to you. Welcome to the program. It is County-Wide. I'm Brad Miller. Very pleased to welcome into studio a guest that we've had many times, and this may be the last time, at least under his current title. The Yavapai County School Superintendent is Tim Carter, has been for the better part of 20 years, more than 50 years in education, and we welcome you, sir, into our studio one more time.
Good morning, Brad. I
say outgoing. You did not run for re-election in this most recent election. I have no doubt you'd have been in this position again had you chosen to be. Steve King, familiar with Cottonwood Schools, is going to be taking over as of January 1. So we want to say again, we appreciate your service, sir.
Well, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much. You have enlightened this program many times. And today I don't know if it's a hot seat or not, but I am going to ask you to speculate about some things.
Okay.
I want to ask, I think a lot of us, because the nature of human nature is to kind of move on and put nasty episodes behind us, and who wants to live through COVID again? Nobody. Or even maybe kind of think about it. But it seems to me, 4 years on, that school children may be among the hardest hit by COVID in terms of the lingering impact. Not necessarily by the illness itself. That's not what we're talking about. But in an educational standpoint. What do you think from your chair, seeing the county through this disaster? Agreed? Are the kids rebounding? Have we seen test scores yet that would suggest a COVID bubble in our learning? Where are we?
Well, that's a really big question.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you in many aspects. COVID was unlike anything that we have ever seen in this country before.
Sure.
You know, we have had some pandemics in the past. In fact, in my 51-year career, I had seen two of them, but they weren't anything close to what we dealt with in COVID. Rather, we're talking about globally or within this country or within even just Yavapai County. So it was a big deal, and it remains a big deal from the standpoint of the effects that it caused. So there's all sorts of things here. One is that there was an interruption in instruction. I mean, there's all sorts of different terms that are being used, and there are some people that have politicized terms like learning loss, and no, let's not use that term. But it certainly was a disruption in their ability to acquire information and be able to apply it. And I think everybody understands that if I'm a third grader when this happens, and I'm now up to what should be a fifth grader by the time it kind of dissipates and some of the major impact goes away, what I didn't learn as a third grader, I now don't know as a fourth grader, or at least I'm not as efficient as I should be.
Bingo.
And now I'm in fifth grade, and now I'm still behind. Now, we can argue all day long about what that diminished capacity was.
Right.
And we can argue further about what do you have to do to overcome that, what strategies work well, what strategies may not have. And in reality, it may be different between a school district in northern Arizona versus one in southern Arizona,
Sure.
An urban area versus a rural area. I mean, you almost have to look at one school district, one school system, one school, one charter school, one homeschool setting to determine what that impact actually was.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to make some assumptions here that may or may not be accurate for the whole. But that impact was certainly there, and we know that in certain subject matters like reading and writing and math, it was more pronounced than in others. We also know that different schools have done different things to try to get those students caught up to where they should be. And to be quite honest, I think our teachers and administrators should have a big pat on the back for being able to do that.
No question about it.
But we also had parents who, as a result, have left our school systems, both districts and charters. Our homeschool numbers went up. Our private school numbers right now are going up. Empowerment scholarship accounts were broadened to basically allow any student to be able to take the capacity that it would allow to them. Mm-hmm. So it's had some fundamental changes across the spectrum in the state of Arizona. Some of those things over time may modify. Some of those things may not.
Right.
But the idea of empowering parents to make decisions around their children, which they've always had, and some may have exercised it, some may have not, we're starting to see a lot more parents that are more actively engaged than they have been in the past.
Yeah.
And that is having an impact. And depending on who you talk to and depending on what lens they bring to the conversation,
right,
they may say this is a really good thing or this is a bad thing or it's almost a neutral thing.
And I think that's it. COVID was unanimously an undue burden on everybody. But now we're all going to look at it differently. Not meaning anyone's going to say, oh, it was great, it was wonderful. But just, I mean, we've all talked about what it does, people working from home. Well, that's getting kind of pulled in quite a bit here 4 years on. Same thing as you're kind of describing. Is there any way to know, and I don't mean to diminish any segment of student populations, but say a senior in high school is going to have a lot of their education behind them. There were the social pieces, missing proms and homecomings and things like that, which were awful. I don't want to diminish that. But might a 12th grader have gone on and graduated at the end of the pandemic year and recovered academically better than maybe a third, fourth, or fifth? Those younger ones, it just seems like there's so much more kind of being poured in at certain pieces or certain segments of our education. Am I making sense to you? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Is there going to be a little bubble of students that were third, fourth, fifth grade, say, during that time?
Well,
Impacted?
I think the bubble is larger at kindergarten and then a little less at first grade and a little less at second grade. By the time you got to be a junior or a senior, if the COVID years were your junior year and your senior year, there were a lot of things that people are unhappy about the prom and the homecoming and those kind of things, and rightfully so. Right. But a lot of those students actually realized that there's a lot of things out there that they didn't realize. Mm-hmm. That, for example, you don't have to have a high school diploma to go to a community college. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is be able to read their basic reading level, and they'll admit you. Yeah. And if you get an associate arts degree from Yavapai College, for example, any one of the state universities is going to accept that AA degree, even though you never, ever graduated from high school. So that in and of itself, that has been very powerful for a lot of people. Right. The same issue, I think, could be applied inversely. So those kindergartner students and first grade students, we know that the younger you are, the more impact negativity has on whatever kind of negativity it might be, mm-hmm. has on your learning capacity. And a first grader that loses, say, 6 months of instruction, that is going to impact that student far greater than 6 months for a sophomore in high school. That's
what I was trying to point out.
Think of it as
that makes sense.
As a person matriculates through those grades, the higher they get, the easier it is to deal with it. So the lower you were at that time, the harder it has been. So we're still in the middle of that.
You bet.
I mean, you think about a second grader, they're now probably a sixth grader.
Right.
Well, a lot of those kids have adjusted just fine. They're doing well. But we've got some who still aren't.
I don't doubt that for a minute. Yeah.
And we're still trying our very best to remediate many of those things.
Yeah. The teachers at the front lines all the way up to your office understand that and know what happened and can act accordingly. All right. I want to take a short break. We'll come back with Tim Carter. We're going to have him peer into the crystal ball. President-elect Trump has talked an awful lot on the campaign trail about maybe dramatically reshaping the Department of Education, perhaps even dismantling that. we're going to get Tim's thoughts on what local repercussions that might have if in case that comes to pass. It's Countywide. Our guest is Yavapai County School Superintendent Tim Carter. I'm Brad Miller. We'll be back right after this.
Life changes, then it changes again. Predicting the unexpected in life is impossible. That's why it's called unexpected. So when it comes to financial goals, our philosophy is don't predict, prepare. Hi, I'm Edward Jones financial advisor Matthias Sandoval. A job loss, change in health, or a loss of a loved one can have a big impact on your family's financial security. Let's work together to help make sure you're equipped for life's unexpected events. Call our office to schedule a face-to-face appointment.
Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Verde Solaire, your hometown heating, air conditioning, and plumbing company in the Verde Valley, and your trusted North Central Arizona Goodman dealer. Goodman is a name you can trust with the revolutionary Comfort Bridge technology factory installed into select Goodman gas furnaces and air handlers to ensure the entire system operates at peak energy efficient performance. Verde Solaire offers free in-home estimates, locally owned and operated since 1983. Visit them at verdesolaire.com. Better, cleaner, faster.
Thank you so very much for your generosity and kindness in helping others. I hope that you take advantage of the many Arizona state tax credits available when giving to qualified charities and schools. If you haven't taken advantage, I hope you'll ask your favorite charity if they qualify. You can go to Arizona Department of Revenue website, search for tax credits, and look at the list of qualifying charities. Then look at your latest Arizona income tax return and see how an Arizona tax credit can benefit many. This is Lewis saying thanks again.
Let's talk. That's the message from Jonna Randall Murdoch, your local Farm Bureau agent, providing a personal touch when making insurance and financial decisions. Jonna will simplify your insurance needs while offering competitive pricing. Let's talk auto, home, life, and farm. Call Jonna at Farm Bureau today at 928-649-8686. Your Cottonwood Farm Bureau property and casualty insurance company. At Farm Bureau, they insure more than just farms.
We welcome you back to the program. It is Countywide. Tim Carter is our guest, Yavapai County School Superintendent, for a short time yet, wrapping up his stellar career with the county at the end of this calendar year. Just that, President Trump, I don't know, he was president, he's president-elect, so I don't know what to call him. We'll say President Trump, has really talked in no uncertain, stern terms about the Department of Education, dismantling it perhaps, reassigning key elements of it to other departments and divisions. Let's assume that happens, because he really kind of said it would. What do you see as the fallout from that on the local level?
Okay, so as you know,
big question. I know.
Before I became an administrator, I was in American government and an instructor that dealt with legal issues. And so I always kind of go back and base things on what does the Constitution say. Mm-hmm. So the United States Constitution does not mention the word education, which tells us that it's not a federal issue. It is a state issue. Now, you can go to Article 11 of the Arizona Constitution, and it gives you a great deal of information about what schools in Arizona are supposed to look like from the standpoint of structure.
Okay.
So thinking of education as a state issue and not a federal issue, I have never thought that there should be a federal Department of Education. Now, realize that President Eisenhower created HEW, Health, Education, and Welfare, back in the 1950s. And it was that way until Jimmy Carter came into office, and I think it was in the early 1980s, where he took health and welfare and created what we now have as Health and Human Services, and then took education out and made it its own separate department.
Division, okay.
And I will have to tell you that the amount of paperwork, the amount of man hours, the amount of federal regulation that states and counties and cities are now having to deal with when it comes to school districts and charter schools is astronomical.
Was it a bad idea then, too? I'm just wondering if, I don't want to get into a history book lesson, but I'm just curious what the impetus was.
I think from a constitutional standpoint, local control should be alive and well. And in Arizona, and certainly in Yavapai County, local control is alive and well.
Yeah.
I would bet you if you ask people in Cottonwood who should make decisions about students in Cottonwood, I bet you they tell you the people in Cottonwood.
Sure.
Not some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. who's never even been to Arizona before. And so that, I think, is the mindset. Now, are there certain things that all students in the nation should know and be able to do? Well, I think we probably could argue that to a great deal. Are there some things that we could agree to? Absolutely. Are there other things that we would argue about tooth and nail? Absolutely. But the issue is in my view, it's the constitutional question. If the founding fathers had wanted the federal government to control education, they would have put it in the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Or the voters and the states since that time would have added it to the Constitution. So each state is different. I mean, you can't compare California schools to Arizona schools.
Sure.
They're so different, it's unbelievable.
Sure.
Well, that's okay because the people in Arizona are doing what we think's right in Arizona. The people in California are doing what they think's right in California, or at least their leadership thinks. So the issue in my mind is I would not have any problem if the Federal Department of Education went away. Now, the question is going to be twofold. One, which of those powers that the federal government is now exercising on behalf of all the states are going to come to each individual state? Let's look at things that are like federal civil rights in nature, like special education, English language learners. Those kinds of things are now going to come to the states, and the states are going to deal with those very differently.
Sure.
They're not that there may be this group of states may use a like concept, but there are going to be other states that are going to do their own thing because they now have the constitutional authority to do that. So that's one issue. The second issue is the federal government spends a lot of money on schools.
Right.
You and I had an opportunity earlier to talk about broadband.
Right.
Well, all of those broadband dollars, for the most part, have come from the federal government. We wouldn't be doing any of the work that we're doing with getting broadband into schools, getting them into homes and businesses, if it hadn't been for federal grants. Well, those federal grants all have strings attached, and that's one of the issues that those of us who have to deal in this world don't like it. But what's going to happen with the loss of those funds? Are the states going to pick up those dollars? Are they now going to start providing funding for additional funding for some of those things that are coming from the federal level?
Right.
And then in Arizona, another big issue, and right here in the Verde Valley, it's something we have to talk about too, is what happens with Native American areas. I mean, those folks are sovereign nations, but the federal government provides a lot of funding to those sovereign nations for educational purposes. Is that money going to come to the state? And is the state then going to take on that obligation to help tribes fund education? So those are the questions that are unanswered. What services are going to come where?
Right.
And how are you going to pay for those services? And if the federal government, for example, the education department, doesn't have the ability to control special education, then is the next president, who may disagree with Mr. Trump, going to say, well, we're going to add it back, or we're going to add it back under health and welfare because it's, or maybe under commerce because it is a civil right.
The legislative ping pong game continues.
Right. So in my personal view, if the Federal Department of Education went away, I'd be just fine with that. But we then have these questions of how are we going to do this and this and this? Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to manage it? Who's going to control it? And this conversation can go on and on and on.
See, and money is where I'm getting at, because I hear about that and I just think, oh, dismantle the Department of Education. Oh, my God, that's terrible. And then I listen to learned people like yourself and I say, okay, yes, I agreed with most of that. That to me is a big fear. Is it going to follow that there will be a federal tax relief if the Department of Education, say, isn't there anymore, and some of the grant monies and some of those things, those fiscal issues that they have supplied either through grants or whatever it is, be enjoyed by the various state legislatures, and will they spend accordingly? Those are the things that scare me about it.
Those are huge questions.
Is it a huge, fat, bloated bureaucracy? I don't doubt that for a minute. I think everything in Washington probably is. but there's pieces in there that it seemed like are being used judiciously, even if you cut out whatever 80% of the bloat. So those are the kinds of things that I would be concerned about, and I'm sure everybody in your position is, and teachers and educators, and we'll find out if there's due diligence being done on that. That's what I kind of worry the most about, how quickly those kinds of things might happen.
Well, and to my knowledge, we've never had a federal agency, cabinet level agency, that has just
I don't think
gone away.
I don't recall that ever.
We've had them, like HEW is now Health and Welfare,
right,
or Health and Human Services, and separately Education.
Right.
You know, we used to have the Department of War. Now it's the military department, the Defense Department.
Yeah.
So we've renamed it.
Right.
But to ever just say that agency is now going away and all of their authority is ended, I'm having a hard time remembering where that's ever happened.
Don't think so. I would assume, and assume is a terrible word, but that the key pieces of that are serving the public would be administered perhaps through Health and Human Services or different kinds of things. It seems like that's how it would work or should work. But we don't see any plan for that. And again, I am asking you to look into this crystal ball, and it's not really a fair question that way because it's nothing but speculation at this point. But it does sound like the incoming administration has definite designs about altering the Department of Health, or rather of Education, if not deleting it completely.
Well, I was reading a thing this morning. It looks like the House and the Senate at the federal level are going to be controlled by the Republican Party, at least
looks
minimally.
Like yeah.
So maybe there is an opportunity
Maybe there's a plan
there where that could happen, and then we'll have to see. But I think there's just lots of questions that are going to be remaining.
Okay. Tim, I really appreciate it. Again, yeah, COVID, it just kind of continues. Do you still get questions in your office about COVID, and people still, I would assume?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
We get questions from educators, board members, people that are actually within the management of the school. We get virtually zero questions from parents and members of the public because it's almost like they've put that away and they've closed the door and they've put the lock on it, and it's back there in memory, and I'm not going to think about it anymore. Yeah. It was negative. It was not anything I ever want to deal with again, and it's just I've removed it from my consciousness. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true in a large part across society from what I see.
Oh, I think so too. Who wants to go back there?
Yeah.
Nobody. Tim Carter is our guest, the lifelong educator and outgoing, retiring at the end of this fiscal year. On December 31st, Steve King will be our new Yavapai County School Superintendent. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. It's always been a pleasure.
It has. Our show is county-wide, and we'll see you next time.
Life changes, then it changes again. Predicting the unexpected in life is impossible. That's why it's called unexpected. So when it comes to financial goals, our philosophy is don't predict, prepare. Hi, I'm Edward Jones financial advisor Matthias Sandoval. A job loss, change in health, or a loss of a loved one can have a big impact on your family's financial security. Let's work together to help make sure you're equipped for life's unexpected events. Call our office to schedule a face-to-face appointment.
Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Verde Solaire, your hometown heating, air conditioning, and plumbing company in the Verde Valley, and your trusted North Central Arizona Goodman dealer. Goodman is a name you can trust with the revolutionary Comfort Bridge technology factory installed into select Goodman gas furnaces and air handlers to ensure the entire system operates at peak energy efficient performance. Verde Solaire offers free in-home estimates, locally owned and operated since 1983. Visit them at verdesolaire.com. Better, cleaner, faster.
Thank you so very much for your generosity and kindness in helping others. I hope that you take advantage of the many Arizona state tax credits available when giving to qualified charities and schools. If you haven't taken advantage, I hope you'll ask your favorite charity if they qualify. You can go to Arizona Department of Revenue website, search for tax credits, and look at the list of qualifying charities. Then look at your latest Arizona income tax return and see how an Arizona tax credit can benefit many. This is Lewis saying thanks again.
Let's talk. That's the message from Jana Randall Murdoch, your local Farm Bureau agent providing a personal touch when making insurance and financial decisions. Jana will simplify your insurance needs while offering competitive pricing. Let's talk auto, home, life, and farm. Call Jana at Farm Bureau today at 928-649-8686. Your Cottonwood Farm Bureau property and casualty insurance company. At Farm Bureau, they insure more than just farms.
This has been Countywide. Listen in each Tuesday and Thursday at this time. If you have a topic or guest idea that you'd like to suggest, email us news@myradioplace.com.